Namaste and Punarapi Hardika Swagatam. So we have been looking at all the verbs from the different groups thus far. Today is the last lecture. It is lecture number 35, and this is going to be an introduction to the conjugation of the verb jñā, to know, from the kryādigaṇa or the ninth group in the various tenses and moods. So the introduction to the kryādigaṇa, I'm going to do an introduction to the kryādigaṇa, and this is the ninth group. So we've looked at the different groups. So we had already done the first and the last one, so bhuādigaṇa and the churādigaṇa, and then we looked at the series. In fact, this whole week was dedicated to just familiarizing oneself with the different conjugations of the different verb forms in the parasmaipadi and the atmanepadi. So having said that, today let's look at this very important verb, which is the verb jñā, or to know. So the sound of the jñā itself could be either the jñā, you normally hear it pronounced as the gyā, but because the jñā is a combination of j and ñ, I would tend to prefer the pronunciation of jñā. So you quickly go over the j like that, jñā, or jñā like that. Okay, so it can be either of the two. I'm still working out which one I'm more comfortable with, but okay. So continuing, we'll do some building of vocabulary there. Let's look at the Vartamana Kala and the Bhavishya Kala of jñā. So you've already done this before in our previous lessons. So let me see if you can remember. Saha janati tau janitaha te jananti. Uttamam. Any bells ringing as you do that? Astu. Tari. Tvam janasi yuvam janithaha yuyam janitha aham janami avam janivaha vayam Janīmaha. Astu. And Bhavishya Kalam, do you remember? Jñāsyati. And then the rest of it follows like the bhuādigaṇa. So, quick look at the table there. Let's say it aloud together. Janati, janitaha, jananti, janasi, janithaha, janitha, janami, janivaha, janimaha. Uttamam. And so you can actually feel the rhythm of it and enjoy the just this mere recitation of it. And like I tell you, like I've told you previously also, the sounds of the Sanskrit language are much more than just meant for communication. These sounds stimulate very specific parts in the brain, which in turn stimulate very specific energy centers in the body. So just saying these words aloud can actually give you a very special experience. Astu. So let's look at the verb in the future. So jñāsyati, jñāsyataha, jñāsyanti, jñāsyasi, jñāsyathaha, jñāsyatha, jñāsyami, jñāsyavaha, and jñāsyamaha. Uttamam. Which are the other groups in this, which are the other verbs in this group? So we have, it's the kryādigaṇa, coming from the root form of the verb kri. So kri means to buy. So krīṇāti, to buy, and kreshyati, bhavishya kale kreshyati. Ash, to eat, ashnāti, and ashishyati. Grah, to take. So it becomes grihnāti and grahishyati. Next, bandh becomes badhnāti. Bhansyati, that's quite a special form. Bhansyati, don't hear it too often, but it's important to know the conjugation of the verb bandh in the future. So bandh means to bind, as you can hear it in the word itself. So grah is to capture, to grasp. So you hear it in the English word grasp as well. So grah, grasp. It's also the word for the planet Grah, and therefore the word gravity, you hear these similarities in the sounds of these words. So grah, which is that which used to attract, okay, and therefore the planets were known as graha. Astu. So we've looked at that, and what is the common form, what is the common characteristic of these verbs in this group? So you see that there is a na that gets added there, okay. So jñā became janati, kri becomes krīṇāti, and ashnāti, grihnāti, badhnāti. So the na is a typical feature of this particular group of verbs. Maybe we'll just do a pause, and I'd like you to make a sentence saying that you two know Sanskrit well. You two know Sanskrit well. Say that. You two would be yuvam. No would be janithaha Sanskritam, and well samyak. Yuvam Sanskritam samyak janithaha. I'll add another sentence to that. You all know Sanskrit well. So yuyam Sanskritam samyak janithaha. If you've come up this far, then I can assure you that you've acquired a certain level of the language. Astu, moving on now. So we have the ajñā, the anadyatana, bhutakala and the kriyatipatil ring. So atra janati becomes janatu or janitat. So we find this form again, the janitat, which is across various verb groups, and then janitam, janantu. So janatu doesn't become janantu but janantu. Uttamam. Janihi, janitat. That's together. Janitam, janitam and janita. Aham janani, that's I should know. Avam janava. So this is a bit of a tricky one. So instead of janiva, it is janava. Okay, this is a bit of a googly, so I'll mark that for you, and janama. Okay, and then we have the next one, which is ajanat, and that's the verb form there. Moving on to the bhutakala, so it's similar to the ajñā. So you get ajanat, ajanitam, ajanan. Astu, so that's again a little different there. Then ajanaha. So janihi becomes ajanaha. That's again different a little bit there. Then ajanitam, ajanita, ajanam. So janani becomes ajanam. That's also a little different, so I'll mark it for you. Then ajaniva. So this is what I was saying, that you need to pay attention. Generally we find a reflection of the lot in the lung or the ajñā in the bhutakala, but here we see that there is a little bit of a difference there, and similarly for the vayam also. So janima, uttamam. So let's say that together. Ajanat, janitam, ajanan, ajanaha, ajanitam, ajanita, ajanam, ajaniva and ajanima. And I'd like you to try to say that, let's do this with the I knew. So I knew your father. How would you say that? I knew your father. I knew, so aham, ajanam, whom? Your, here your as in the informal you. So aham, tava janakam, ajanam. Astu. And if you wanted to say your as in masculine, aham, bhavataha janakam ajanam, and if it was a lady, aham bhavatyaha janakam ajanam. Uttamam. Let's move on. Look at the anadyatana bhuta and the vidhiling. So here we have ajanat and janiyat, a table that helps you to do a comparative study there. So ajanat becomes janiyat, ajanitam becomes janiyatam. Uttamam. Ajanan, janiyuhu. So that's a bit different. Ajanaha will become janiyaha. Uttamam. Ajanitam, janiyatam. So ajanaha was janiyaha. Ajanitam becomes janiyatam. Ajanita, janiyata. Ajanam, janiyam. Ajaniva becomes janiyava, and ajanima becomes janiyama. Uttamam. And I'd like you to make a use this table that we have here with this kind of an if then of the yaha saha yasa and yat tat. So let's make some sentences. I'll give you an example. Yaha gayakaha bhavitum ichhati saha sangeetam janiyat. So one who wants to be a singer must know how to sing. Okay, so you must know some songs and music. Next, for teacher, so yaha shikshakaha bhavitum ichchati, so that is together there. Saha pathan janiyat, he must know the lessons. Next one, ya and lekhika, alright. So ya lekhika bhavitum ichchati, what should she know? Sa lekhitum janiyat, she must know how to write. Next, the one who wants to cook, who wants to become a cook, ya pachika bhavitum ichchati, sa pakam janiyat, she must know how to cook, uttamam. And then yat tat, so yat satyam asti tat janiyat, so what is true one must know, because only then one is in a more effective position to do anything about that piece of information. And that's also the reason why Satyameva Jayate was the motto, or is the motto, of our nation. And in the process of the whole population and many things, we've lost a little track of the importance of that, but we're hopeful that we'll get back on track fully on that. So next, yat varam, that which is good or that which is better, varam is better. Yat varam tat avashyam janiyat, must know what is better so that you can improve. Let's move on. Alright, let's do some bhashanam there. So Sayam Piyusha.
Namaste Arye.
Bhavan apane adhuna kim karoti?
Aham apane idanim grihartam vastuni krinami.
Astu. Anyat?
Anyat mama mitranam krite upaharan grahishyami iti chintayami.
Tava mitrani jananti kim yat tvam tebhyah upaharan kreshyasi?
मित्राणि न जानन्ति परन्तु तेषां मध्ये एकं मित्रं दृष्टवान् माम् अत्र.
अस्तु,
तर्हि
तु अन्ये अपि ज्ञास्यन्ति एव.
आम्, तत्तु भवितुं शक्यते. तत्र तु मम समस्या नास्ति. अद्य श्वः वा सर्वे ज्ञास्यन्ति.
हरि ओम्. इदानीं वर्षायाः आरम्भः अभवत्. यदि न अभविष्यत् तर्हि अहम् इतोपि वस्तूनि अक्रेष्यामि, किन्तु चलतु शीघ्रं गच्छावः.
चलतु शीघ्रं.
Moving on to the verse, so we have a subhashitam which says janiyat sangare bhrityan bandhavan vyasanagame apat kaleshu mitrani bharyam cha vibhavakshaye. It's a very interesting subhashitam, because it says what is the measure, when do you recognize an authentic servant, bhritya, when do you recognize a good servant? So it says janiyat sangare, in the time of war. So one knows the true character of a servant during war. Next, bandhavan vyasanagame, when do you know that the value of a true relative? When you get sick and you're in difficulty. Vyasanam is sickness and difficulty in general. So bandhavan vyasanagame, when you're in a difficult situation, the relatives who will stick by you are the ones you can count on. Apat kaleshu mitrani, so of friends when you are in trouble. So when you're in difficulty, those people who stick with you are your friends. And finally, very interesting one, he says, how do you recognize a true wife? He says, bharyam cha vibhavakshaye. So even when you have no money, if your wife, I would say also your husband, sticks with you, then you know that there is true love behind that relationship. So saying that, let's do a grammatical analysis. Janiyat sangare. So ta plus sa. Sangara being war. Okay. Janiyat sangare. And then bhrityan bandhavan. So we are all getting the pullinga bahuvachanam dvitiya vibhakti there. Vyasanagame, in the time of difficulty. Apatkaleshu. Apatkala is a samasta padam, times of difficulty. Mitrani, and bharyam cha vibhavakshaye. Vibhu is wealth. So when that is reducing, then you would know a true wife. And she stays with you, of course, then. Let's move. I'd like you to repeat after me. Janiyat sangare bhrityan bandhavan vyasanagame apat kaleshu mitrani bharyam cha vibhavakshaye. Astu. So a quote from Sri Aurobindo. He says the connection with the spirit behind things, because we are also trying to access certain knowledge traditions through Sanskrit, and how can we do it effectively? He says, since the knowledge the scripture conveys is so deep, difficult and subtle, if it were easy, that what would be the need of the scripture? The interpreter cannot be too careful or too perfectly trained. He must not be one who will rest content in the thought symbol or in the logical implications of the idea. He must hunger and thirst for what is beyond. The interpreter who stops short with the letter is the slave of a symbol and convicted of error. The interpreter who cannot go beyond the external meaning is the prisoner of his thought and rests in the partial and incomplete knowledge. One must transgress limits and penetrate to the knowledge behind, which must be experienced before it can be known. For the ear hears it and the intellect observes it, but the spirit alone can possess it. Realization in the self of things is the only knowledge. All else is mere idea or opinion. So, few references for you. So, Purnam Sanskrita Jnanam Astu Vaha. So, Purnam Sanskrita Jnanam Astu. So, may you have full knowledge of Sanskrit. Astu Vaha for all of you. So, for these words, Shubham Bhavatu.